The harsh reality is a new strong sanded solid asymmetric ball coming from 900 Global on February 16th, and this will be the first look on the channel both at it and our new tester Tobias Myers. Tobias is bowling on the Kegel Chromium lane condition that we always use for testing. It's a challenge pattern at just under a 7-to-1 ratio. It's 42 feet long, 25.5 mils. That puts it on the heavy side of medium for both volume and length. It's not as easy as a house shot, but not as punishing as a sport pattern. We also have to shout out Royal Crest Lanes for always taking care of us. They're a major part of making these videos happen. I have Tobias's layout information up on the screen in both languages. Conveniently, it's the same layout I use, and like me and Angel, he likes to keep layouts simple so they'll be consistent from ball to ball, which will let the differences from ball to ball shine through. He also throws everything out of the box to start with to see which direction he needs to go with the surface, so we'll be able to help you figure out whether it's a good idea for you to leave it or whether you might need an adjustment. This is a very strong ball. It's designed to be strong, and the box surface of 2000 fits that idea. We'll have to talk about this a bit more in the body of the review because this ball seems to fit somewhere between the original Reality, which was strong but throwable with some shine in League, and the Gem, which is more of a tanky heavy oil ball that doesn't fit for most people in League. To introduce Tobias, he's a very relatable, dedicated bowler. He bowls a couple leagues a week, he hits a handful of the larger participation tournaments throughout the year, such as Greater Ozarks and Greater Tulsa, and he's an SPI Pro Shop staffer through Drew's Pro Shop at Gladstone Bowl in Kansas City. His rev rate is on the higher side, but nothing crazy. He's got average speed, and he creates a really readable ball roll that should give most of you something familiar and helpful to watch. As usual, I'm going to give you the details first while we watch to get your eyes warmed up, and then we're going to run it back and tackle it zone by zone to talk about the adjustments he made when moving around, where it felt the most comfortable, where he felt like he had to help it the most, so on and so forth, just to get deeper and give you a much better idea where it's going to fit both for him and for you. The Harsh Reality features the Reserve Blend 902 cover stock, and once again, since Global has gone to this new naming convention, it just increases sequentially and doesn't really seem to mean anything, but they do provide plenty of information on the website to help us out. The formula is very similar to the S84 response cover from the original Reality, but juiced up or a little stronger to keep it simple. The core is the same asymmetric disturbance core from the Reality line, but it also gets the AI outer core treatment, which buffs the core strength a little. Very minimal here. The RG goes down from 249 to 248. The diff goes up from 052 to 054, and the int diff, or the asymmetry, goes up from 018 to 019. So again, marginal difference, but creates a little extra strength while still feeling familiar. While most of us on the channel kind of hop from zone to zone, Tobias instead makes a smaller move or a smaller adjustment on every shot to give you more of a progressive look as he moves deeper. There's no place on the lane that this ball really gets uncomfortable. He didn't have to up the speed from straighter as much as he expected, and while he did have to keep it a little closer to the head pin or not cover as many boards once he got deeper, if you pay attention as we're looking at this, he doesn't have to change much from right to left. The Harsh looks like a Reality line ball. The shape on the lane is very reminiscent of the more archy, hook set, hockey stick kind of look that is directional off the end of the pattern. It can be forward if you want it to be, or very continuous if you want that instead. Again, lots of dig out of this ball. It gives him a couple boards outside of the typical out of bounds area on this pattern. A much outside 4 or 5 on the right side of the lane doesn't usually make it back, but he had a couple get to 2 board that wheeled back, and they didn't just limp back up the hill, they picked up and drove. Very responsive for as much as it hooks as well, which again is a typical trait of the Reality line. A lot of strength, but a nice defined, consistent move on the back end. He's got a surprising amount of miss room on this pattern for a ball that hooks this much, and shots that miss seem to be just a simpler speed adjustment. Going back to the box surface topic, again, we're bowling on a little more volume and length than most of you are going to see in your leagues, but still, typically the ultra strong stuff is still too much for this pattern, but this one kind of toes the line. It's definitely more than a Reality, but not as much as a Gem. Mostly it seems that the AI core has created a little heavier roll, which makes it a bit earlier and stronger than the Reality, and while they said the cover is also a little stronger, it seems to be marginal because this still looks really familiar. This also seems to have the off-hit AI core magic because he got a handful of hits he probably shouldn't have, and take that how you will. Remember, I'm not a staffer anymore, and I get absolutely zero from saying that. You've got eyes and you can choose to use them or roll them or both, but carry percentage was extremely high on pocket hits, and you can be the judge on why you think that is. A note that he also made is that the harsh feels more like a solid altered reality than the original reality did, and I agree, the original is a little rounder. This one has a much closer look on the lane to the altered, if that makes sense. Heading to the chart, this is one of those as close as you're going to get on maxing out overall strength without actually doing it. Ultimately, it seems to be a lot like an Eternity Pie that shapes more. The Pie is a little heavier rolling and slower, but cover traction and overall strength seems very close, if not identical. We're just dealing with a fairly substantial shape difference. That also makes the harsh a little stronger and a little sharper than the Black Widow 3.0, for example. It's about the same strength as Columbia's Pure Madness, but definitely longer and sharper. Still not quite into extreme envy territory, extremely close, but a little weaker, longer, and sharper versus the EE. Taking a look at the original reality, I think you can see right away that it's again slower and rounder than the harsh, also a little weaker, but again very familiar. The reality seemed to get a little smoother and more controllable throughout its lifetime though. I remember my original one being a fair amount more dynamic, quite a bit more similar to the harsh than the newer Pores were. The harsh, I think, is still more ball and more dynamic than any version of the original though. It's easy to see why this ball was so popular, especially on tougher conditions. It's basically just an asymmetric phase 2, so if the P2 was close, but a little long or slow, the reality was a similar shape and similar strength, just with more torque on the back end to help firm it up and make it pick up harder down lane. Same general results again as he moves around, just naturally a little more forgiveness on shots that were inside and a little less on shots that were outside. That's a pretty standard trade-off for smoother reactions versus sharper ones though. You'll get more push slash shim slash hold out of smoother balls and more recovery from sharper balls. Looking at the chart, the reality is basically a Black Widow 3.0 across the board, so this can go a few different ways. If you want a straight up, direct reality replacement, the 3.0 is right on top of it, but if you want a little more buffed version, that's the harsh. The harsh, I think, represents an extremely well-placed ball. Sometimes something like a 3.0 or a reality can be in a weird zone where they're a little too strong for league but not quite chewy enough when you need something strong on heavier, longer patterns. I think the harsh is right in that gap where it's more ball than either of those, but it's not quite as crazy or extreme as the gem or extreme envy. Flipping back and forth on the way out here, I think the shape difference is easy to see. I think it's easy to see that if you already have a reality, you don't need to worry about overlap. A little more strength, definitely a more dynamic motion out of the harsh. We'll also be getting some footage here soon for his Eternity Pie to take a closer look there. I think that if you have both a Pie and a reality that you can use this comparison to put some pieces together. I think the Pie is earlier and heavier rolling than the reality, but it doesn't shape as much as the harsh does. We'll find out soon though. The harsh reality releases with the Exponent Pearl and Rotogrip's Attention Star on February 16th. Already have videos for those last two featuring Zach Rhodes, and we'll have Tobias's looks at them in addition to Zach's look at the harsh coming in the near future. Down in the description is a link to Bowler's Mart that will get any of the balls featured in this video ordered for you. I do have to note, of course, that I receive a 5% commission on all sales through the links. And of course, don't forget my code ROSEDOLL10 to get 10% off your order at checkout at CoolWick. Thanks for watching, and may the strikes be with you.